Hello, my name is Anna-Catharina Gebbers and I'm a curator here at Nationalgalerie im Hamburger Bahnhof, Museum für Gegenwart Berlin. And I curate exhibitions here, but I'm also responsible for the collections of time-based media art and performance art. I'm sitting here because the video lecture series is part of one of the projects of the cluster in the research area Traveling Matters, which is the project Circulating Narratives, Entangling Communities, Case Studies in Global Performance Art, and which is a collaboration between the Cluster of Excellence and the Nationalgalerie at Hamburger Bahnhof. The project will explore how diverse histories inform performative practices and shape communities as embodied knowledge. And it will accompany an exhibition which will be held at Hamburger Bahnhof from October 2021 to March 2022, and which is curated by Pierre Bourdieu, Grace Sambo, June Jab and me. But I will talk about this later on, because right now I'm at the museum and today I'm alone at the museum. So depending on what you mean by alone, because we are here in the midst of an institution that has grown out of the legacy of the imperial era, the era of Cold War, and of course the Western art canon. And since I'm a curator, I will answer the questions of this video lecture series with examples of my practice as a curator and its inherent contradictions. To be precise, I'm on my way to the exhibition Magical Soup, which I curated and which is currently closed due to the predictions taken in regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. The exhibition Magical Soups explores the relationship between sound, language and image, especially by means of time-based media artworks dating from the 1970s to the present day, but I've also included a number of installations and works on paper. Other than the title Magical Soup might suggest, the work have nothing to do with mysticism or fantasy literature. The title is based, among other things, on an essay by the German art critic Franz Roh from 1925. And he coined for some of the paintings of the Neue Sachlichkeit or New Objectivity the term magic realism. In these paintings, he wrote, reality would be depicted in realistic pictures in which other levels of reality become visible, specifically unpleasant but otherwise gladly concealed aspects of everyday reality. And thus, Roh sees in the works of the magic realism in the 1920s an art that finally became political again after the abstract works of expressionism. Another reason for the exhibition's title is a book by the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. In his book Language and Symbolic Power from 1982, Bourdieu used the term performative magic to describe linguistic action whereby realities are named and at the same time generated through the performative speech act, which you might know from the speech act theory. He emphasizes that above all, words uttered by rulers within socially appropriate conventions and institutions have performative magic. According to Bourdieu, this magic corresponds with symbolic power, as the linguistic indicative is an imperative, and language is therefore the key medium of symbolic power. And third, the title is a reference to Lewis Carroll's novel Alice in Wonderland from 1865, in which, after Alice fell into the rabbit hole, the rules of grammar no longer seem to apply. Dialogues falter as the protagonists talk past each other, and words and their seemingly self-evident meanings fall apart. In the exhibition's first room is Stan Douglas' light installation Du Devis, Breath and Mime from 1982 to 83. The work's soundtrack comprises two pieces of music, which are translated by Stan Douglas in two forms of imagery. O ma belle rebelle by Charles Gounod is shown with text charts showing the lyrics of this romantic French song translated into English. And during the second song, which is Preachin' Blues by Robert Johnson, you see the mouth of the Afro-Canadian artist Stan Douglas mimicking the phoneme sounds of Johnson's blues lyrics. Stan Douglas uses the juxtaposition to illustrate ascriptions, adopted self-attributions and prejudices in connection with supposed white high culture and black subculture. Highlighted is a friction between racial stereotypes and expectations through language. Here you can see the impressive 35mm film projector that usually projects Cyprien Gaillard's work Artifacts from 2011 onto this wall, which shows images of the archaeological site of Babylon in Iraq and the Ishtar Gate at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. David Gray's song Babylon, which can be heard in this work, is one of the unpleasant, concealed aspects of reality, which include the deployment of pop songs as a torture method called enhanced interrogation method in the so-called war on terror in Iraq. Another example for the employment of sound as psychological warfare method in form of the ghost tape number 10, which was a destabilization method employed in America's war in Vietnam, and which can be heard in Sung Chu's video installation No Gods, No Masters. Oh, who's calling? It's supposed to be silent here. Oh well, what you can find here is the direct implementation of the Performative Speech Act. Jochen Gerz is one of the earliest and most relevant German video artists, and in this 1972 performance for the camera, he does exactly what the title says, to call until exhaustion, rufen bis zur Erschöpfung. In Nicole Wermer's installation, The Violet Breaths, we witness the occupation of public space by motorbike jackets, which create facts in a kind of performative act as we accept the occupation of the chairs by absent persons as a self-evident fact. Choreographer Ronan Chai's installation with 3 videos is about memory, storytelling and myths as a means of writing history. And the 3 videos raise the question of how corruptible memory is, and even when it's transferred to digital storage devices. Trisha Vargas' work Madonna y El Niño quotes, among other things, Madonna's Evita Diaries, Apichatpong Vera Zetakul's film Tropical Melody, and Toni Morrison's magic realism novel Beloved. She found most of the stuff online. It thus poses the question of self-chosen communities for the performative production of an own reality and identity. Well, and on we go. Now I've skipped a large number of works and go directly to the last larger room of the exhibition. The first work here is a work by Nam June Paik from 1997 called I Never Read Wittgenstein, I Never Understood Wittgenstein. Already in its title, this work alludes directly to what Wittgenstein called the language game or Sprachspiel, and which was a departing point for the later on so-called speech act theory, the performative speech act and its reality-changing effect. And of course, Paik has understood Wittgenstein and read Wittgenstein, or at least his name, the moment he wrote the name. And here we pass the work Disruptive Pattern by Sandra Mujinga, which among other things alludes to the philosopher and poet Edouard Glissant, who recognized the basic injustice in the worldwide spread of transparency and its projection of Western thinking, which led him in an essay from 1990 to demand the right to opacity for everyone. And at the end of this hall, we see a work by Anna Imhoff. The silkscreen print shows the artist and performer Eliza Douglas kept in an intangible in-between, between crouching and walking, between screaming or singing, and between distinct classifications of expression or gender. This is another form of opacity, since attributions fall into a void. Anna Imhoff's works are created both in a studio practice as well as in a collective practice with a team of collaborators. And I would like to sit down here because an essential part of my curatorial practice are international, or maybe, let's say, not primarily from a European and North America perspective, develop collaborative projects. One example is the exhibition chapter Making Paradise, Places of Longing from Paul Gauguin to Tita Salina, for the comprehensive Nationalgalerie exhibition Hello World, revising a collection in 2018. Starting from the Artists Alliance Peter Maher in Ubud in Bali in the 1930s, Making Paradise was scrutinizing forms of image and cliché production of the exotic other, through visual arts and photography, performing arts, literature, and also central to curatorial practice, their presentation and representation. Develop was Making Paradise by me in exchange with my colleague Grace Zambo from Yogyakarta, my colleague Enin Simprianto from Jakarta in Java, and as an advisor with the artist Gede Mahendra Yaza from Denpasar in Bali. In this collaborative spirit, I've developed in 2019 the exhibition Microera with time-based media artworks from China, with curator colleagues from Beijing and Hong Kong. But my longest collaboration in my time at the Nationalgalerie was initiated by the Goethe Institute Southeast Asia in 2017, and which is the research and exhibition project Collecting Entanglements and Embodied Histories. This project involves multiple collections and 4 curators, which are Grace Zambo, with whom I've already collaborated for Making Paradise, and who is a researcher and curator living in Yogyakarta, and who will operate for this project from the collection base of the Galerie Nacional Indonesia in Jakarta. Gritya Gavivon, who is the artistic director of the Jim Thompson Art Center in Bangkok and a curatorial advisor for the Contemporary Art Museum Mayam in Chiang Mai. June Jap, who is the director of curatorial programs and publications at the Singapore Art Museum, and I on behalf of the collection of the Nationalgalerie in Berlin. As a collaborative and multi-venue curatorial project, Collecting Entanglements and Embodied Histories explores how interwoven histories within the context of nation building, individual identity formation, as well as their embodiment are reflected in artistic works, in exhibition histories, and in the formation of institutional collections. Our research and exchange of knowledge will be channeled in 4 exhibition chapters, which will be on display from 2021 to 2022 at the 4 participating collections in Chiang Mai, Singapore, Jakarta, and Berlin. The Goethe Institute is our collaborator and interlocutor, and it's funding the project since 2017. However, the first public presentation of the project took place in summer 2019 with a conference and performance program here at Hamburger Bahnhof, where we invited speakers and artists from Hong Kong, Indonesia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Supported by the Goethe Institute Southeast Asia, this event also marked the official beginning of the cooperation between the Hamburger Bahnhof, Museum für Gegenwart Berlin, and the Cluster of Excellence 2020 Temporal Communities Doing Literature in a Global Perspective of the Freie Universität Berlin. After some discussions over the title, it finally became Embodied Histories, Entangled Communities, Southeast Asian and Western Approaches to Narratives and Performance Art. And of course, the term performance art with a capital P and a capital A provoked resistance to it among virtually all our speakers from the Southeast Asian region because of its very origin in the Europe and North America-centered art canon and its, I quote, regulatory and spectacle power of discursive performance, as my colleague Simon Soon from the Malaysia Design Archive called it on another occasion. And I quote further from Simon Soon's essay, Rethinking Curatorial Colonialism from 2016. As a discursive spectacle that emerged from the 1990s onward, the curatorial, as the epistemological handmaiden of advanced capitalism that continues to align itself within the paradigm of reason along the tradition of the Enlightenment, meant that certain blind spots continue to exist even if curatorial discourse makes bold critical claims towards discursive reflexivity. And here's another link to the Performative Speech Act and to language as this key medium of symbolic power. Some minutes ago, I've talked you through the exhibition without showing the works. In this case, it was not even just my exhibition dramaturgy in which I selected and arranged the works. The works could not even articulate themselves with their own voices and their own language. Everything was translated by me. And that brings me to the central question of my lecture. Who speaks how, about whom, and what, to whom, in what time, and in which context? To call something performance art with capital P and capital R, A already follows the rule of the Western canon and the claim to validity of the exclusionary Western art canon. And even the term Southeast Asia, a term coined for the region by the CIA, should be questioned. And in the same way, the division into nations in this region is above all a result of the colonial era. It's not only about the provocative question by Gayatri Spivak, can the subaltern speak, but rather to demand the right for opacity at the same time. The demand for multi-perspectivity and for avoiding the subjugation of diversity to a hegemony of Western categories of science and art history. This requires the performative presence of different bodies and different voices in the same place and same space at the same time, and to unlearn scientific categories which are deeply rooted in outdated Eurocentric patterns of thought. Thank you.